Hello, everybody, and welcome to our very first podcast. This is our second.
This is
effort,
our second.
Our second effort at our first podcast. So, as usual, we have a tendency to fuck things up. I'm here with Lance Roberts. He is my best friend, and we've known each other for 20 plus years, over 20 years.
Yeah, 20 over 21 at least. 21, 22 years.
Something. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And Lance, if I've shared, I know I've shared with a lot of folks. Lance got to see the whole trajectory. He knew me before I became a really bad alcoholic. He knew me whenever I was a really bad alcoholic, and he, of course, has subsequently seen the progression.
Recovery.
Yeah. So if you guys hear something going on, it's my dogs. We've been obviously talking beforehand, but I was sharing with Lance how my life is just in such a bad place. It was I knew it was bad. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew it was bad, and I had just reached a point where, okay, God, I've tried everything here, so I'm just going to die a drunk. I clearly remember I had resolved it in my head that this is how I'm going to die. So just go ahead. I was too afraid to bite the bullet. I was too afraid to put the gun in my mouth. I was too afraid to jump off the cliff or whatever. But had I not had that fear, I would have easily ended my life. That's just where I was at. So I took the easy way out, so to speak. In the sense that I was going to let alcohol finish the job for me, right? So I was already way down that road,
right?
And I talked this morning in the monologue how my wife, when we were in Dayton, my wife had told me she flat out told me, she said, "You're nothing but a fat, no good, lazy, out of shape drunk, and you need to get your shit together." Those were some hard truths.
Shotgun blast to the face.
Shotgun blast of truth to the face.
Yeah.
Right. Those were definitely some hard truths. But I remember she said that, I was like, she's not wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I always say that was kind of like the brakes on the car.
Mm-hmm.
My car that was careening out of control.
On the road, I used to tell somebody, you're heading down the road of self-destruction and you're shifting gears.
Yeah, I'm
you're accelerating and shifting gears. Yeah,
and so that was the brakes put on the car. And then the night on July 5th, as I'm drinking whenever I'm talking to you, right?
Yeah.
I was drinking. I had the bottle right in my hand.
No, you didn't have it in your hand. I didn't see it.
No, the night you were on the phone.
Oh, on the phone. Okay,
on the phone.
Gotcha. Okay, I thought you meant the other. Go ahead.
No, the night, July the 5th,
Mm-hmm.
I'm standing out by my pool.
Okay.
And I am talking to you on the phone, and I have the bottle in my hand.
I didn't know that. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm sweet. You're yelling at me, bitching at me. You're bigger as a house, or
yeah. See, I don't even remember. I remember by the time I hit that point,
you were rolling.
Yeah,
it
was coming out. Yeah.
Yeah.
There wasn't no diplomacy.
There was none whatsoever.
There was no politically correctness. It was, yeah.
Yeah, but to that point, actually, if Chris saying those things to me was the brakes on the car, you were the one bringing the driver kind of to, in the sense that hey, you've got to wake up. You've fallen asleep at the wheel.
Right.
And then, oh shit, I'm trying to turn the car around and I see the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm processing all this in my head going, how the fuck did I even get here? How did I get to this point?
Right.
What happened in my life that was so bad that brought me to this point, And so I made the correction.
Mm-hmm.
But I still had a long way to travel to get back to the normal road.
Right.
And that was when, and initially coming in the rooms of AA, the first 25, 27 days, something like that. I don't know why 27 sticks in my mind. I had dabbled in the AA rooms a second time, or a fifth or sixth time by that point. But the third person that I attribute a lot of credit to is Chad. He was the one. He was my son's coach. He's the one who sent me that video of Andy Frisella,
Right.
telling me that my life fucking sucks. That it's all my
It's
fault.
your fault that it does. Yeah.
It's all my fault. And I
Yeah.
remember being so angry at this guy. I'm like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Who is this guy to tell me that all my problems are my fault?
If your life sucks, you deserve it.
Yeah, and that, he finishes with that in
Yeah.
the video, right?
Right.
And that was like, oh, and I got mad. So that kept me, that anger that I had towards this guy in this video that I didn't know. I didn't even know his name at that point.
Right.
But he fueled me long enough to get me into the rooms of AA. But we were just talking about it, and beforehand, and I was, for me, Chris saying those things to me was the brakes on the car. Your conversation ripping my ass. You basically reiterated everything Chris had said to me. So here's a second opinion, second
Right.
outside
opinion
Yeah,
from
I
somebody
had-
close to you.
Right.
Yeah.
I had my own opinion. I knew I couldn't manage my drinking. I had argued that time and time again, and I finally arrived at the point where I said, you know what, I don't have to fight this battle anymore because I'm never going to win. Matter of fact, every time I've tried to argue it, every time I've tried to prove my argument is true, I have failed.
Yeah, see, this is something real quick where it's amazing because as close as we are, you've always been really good about regulating yourself. You'd go years and be sober, you fall off the wagon,
Right.
and then you might tell me about it, you might not. Most time you didn't, but you would fall off the wagon, but you get back on pretty quick. Like it'd be a minute, and then we'd catch up, and I go, "What have you been doing?" He said, "Well, I'm sober," and I said, "Well, I didn't even know you were drunk." And you'd be like, "Well,
Right.
I went like 3 weeks, but this ain't for me." Or I remember there's times you'd call me out of the blue and I can go, "Hey, guess what I did? Guess what I'm doing?" I go, "What?" And you go, "I'm pouring all my liquor down the sink right now." Glug, 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 glug. And I'll go, "Well, I didn't know you was drinking again," But then you'd go in there 2, 3, 4 years and be good. This last go around, I hear you when the videos that you're sending, and you're saying you're on the verge of suicide. I'm over here going, I had no idea you were that far gone. Now I can see the car wreck happening,
Right.
but in the same sense, I didn't realize it was as bad as it was.
The driver was already asleep at the wheel.
Yeah. I thought you were swerving, and you were already comatose in the flipping front seat.
Yeah.
And I hear when you say that, like I just gave up. Now I'm going down. I'm going, you motherfucker. Why didn't you, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you? We've talked about this where on my side of it, not being on the alcoholic side of it or the addiction side of it, being the loved one involved with somebody like that.
Right.
It's the most heartbreaking thing in the world to see somebody you love killing themselves.
You brought up yesterday when we were talking and during our first go around how I was sneaky. I was a functional alcoholic, I think is what you said.
Yeah. Chris's was completely different because when she screwed up, buddy, it was large.
Everybody knew.
CNN worthy. It was big. Everybody can see that. Everybody can see that and go, that girl just messed up.
Right.
Yours was completely different because this is how I think you deceived yourself into, I'm managing it. Hey, because you'd say, when I get drunk, I just come back here to the house and just get, and I don't think you'd even say drunk. You'd say, I have a few drinks and
Right.
then I just, kick back on the couch and I'm all mellow and you don't see me out here wrecking cars and you don't see me out here blah, blah, blah.
That was me justifying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to an extent, there's I don't see anything wrong with a guy who works all day, comes home from work, and has a glass or has a beer.
Right.
There ain't nothing wrong with a guy having beer with dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I can understand that. That's in the acceptable range.
Right. See, I always drank. I always said I had rules.
Yeah,
When I
I
was,
remember
that?
rules. Yeah,
I had rules.
This is
and,
how I manage it.
This is how I
have
manage
rules.
it.
Yeah.
I followed my rules, and one of my
It's
rules.
like Dexter.
Yeah, the code of Harry.
Yeah,
the code of Harry.
Only you're killing you're serial killing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the rules was I had to be pretty damn sure that I wasn't going to have to go out.
Yeah.
Again that night. and then I had to be by myself. Like I remember being on the baseball weekends. We'd be in a hotel, and I'd be downstairs with everybody who's getting shit-faced plastered, man. But not me. Nope, I'm good. I didn't start drinking until I went back upstairs. The kids were in bed. I was by myself, and then I would get plastered.
You know, this just dawned on me. It literally just dawned on me. One of the telling things I knew you had a problem. We've always been there for each other. You know, hey, I need you now.
Right.
All right. Well, you know, hey, you need me now. I got this function I got to go. No,
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that.
Okay. Sorry, I got to go. You know,
Right.
I'm Drew needs me. I was coming home from Fletcher's one night, and the van broke down.
And you called me.
And I called you.
And I remember saying, I've had too much to drink.
I can't do it. I can't. Yeah.
I remember that.
And I remember going, I'm broke down on the side of the fucking road, and you're drunk, and can't come and get me.
It was. I remember because it was a late night phone call. It
Yeah.
was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah.
It was a late night phone call, and I'd already met my requirements.
Right.
Pretty damn sure I wasn't going to have to go out. Everybody was already asleep in the house, so I sat in there and just downed the bottle until, and that was the thing. I always drank to oblivion.
Yeah.
I always drank to when it would make me pass out, because that way, when I was passed out, I didn't have to think.
Right.
I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to stress. There was nothing. It was nothingness.
Right.
And that's what I sought by drinking. And I never woke up. I came to. I always came to. I never woke up. You know, like we wake up now. When
Right.
we get out of bed, we wake up with an intent. I guess I did have an intent too. I would come to just so I could start drinking again,
Right.
and pass back out,
Right.
because I didn't want to have to deal or think or process. So that was a. I clearly remember that phone call. I
Yeah,
remember
because
thinking,
you called me the next day and you felt like a heel.
Oh, I did.
You did. You said, "Man, I am so sorry." And I remember you having the big speech with me. I got to get my shit together. You know, because that was the first time we'd never not been there for each other.
Right.
Specifically, you with me. We've always been there, but like the Bon Jovi song, if I got that call in the middle of the night,
Right.
I'd be right by your side.
Right.
And you couldn't. I remember you saying, you went, I can't, I'm drunk.
Yep.
And I went, what do you mean you're drunk? Like it's 3:30 in the morning here.
Yep.
You know, what do you mean you're drunk? You mean like you were drinking earlier and you've like you're good enough to come and grab me, man.
Right.
And you're like, no, man, no. Like I can't drive.
So see, in my head, that made me a responsible drunk.
Right.
That made me a drunk that was following my own rules. So going back to that justification, I was able to justify it. I didn't go burn down houses. I didn't wreck cars. I didn't kill people.
Right. Get fired from work or
fired
make
from-
a big scene that was on YouTube or whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
I wasn't on the social media
Right.
throwing a chair at a Waffle House worker or whatever.
Because your waffles are cold.
Right. So, yeah, in my mind, I always justified it. So we come to, that night, July 5th, and we talked about this yesterday. You had obviously reached a point, you live with addiction yourself. Not you personally, but your ex-wife, she had addiction issues.
Yeah.
And so you saw it firsthand. You had that ringside seat.
I had.
Your kids were affected by addiction. Your whole entire family unit was affected by addiction. So something must have happened on July the 5th when you called me that night. Because I remember I came home and Chris she said, Lance wants to talk to you. And I was like, fuck.
That don't sound good.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good. The way she said it, and then I think she followed, I can't remember if it was before or after she said that. She said, I just got off the phone with Lance, he was ripping my ass. And it might have been after, because I remember thinking, oh shit, it's my turn then.
Yeah, because I'd had enough of her shit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it you saw, or what did I do or say that just brought you to that breaking point of, I've got to say something. I'm done being diplomatic. I've tried being nice. I've tried being diplomatic. I've got to lay it out there for them.
You're not getting it. You're still, both of you all were so, you all were in fifth gear by this point. and they're trying to love you through it, trying to have logical conversations. You can't have logical conversation with a drunk.
Right.
You know, you're drunk. You're
Right.
intoxicated. I'm trying to be diplomatic. I'm trying to, because there's a fine line too with addiction where people don't want to hear, addicts don't want to hear the speech.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to hear the story. They don't want to hear the.
I know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I heard from everybody.
But I remember there was, you know, I was listening to you, and there was a couple things. It wasn't just one thing. You know, it was a gradual thing where I'd come up and we'd talk and we'd have this great conversation, and you know, you'd tell me everything I'd want to hear, and Chris would tell me everything. Chris could literally screw up, and then come back the next day and say, you know what I did wrong? This is exactly what I did wrong, and I didn't even have to tell her.
Right.
She would say, but now I've put the steps in place to make sure that doesn't happen again. Da da da. And then 3 days later, you call me and say, guess what? Blah, blah. And I'm like, we just had this conversation. How do you do this? In the same sense too, you were doing your thing. You were off radar. You were becoming more and more
withdrawn.
Yeah, withdrawn. Then when we would talk, I wasn't the logic and the rational Drew. I was getting. I remember one time specifically, we talked about this last night or yesterday, where we were going somewhere. I think we was going to pick up David from a sleepover or something, and we were in the car, and you were ranting about Chris's alcoholism, and somewhere in the middle of the conversation, I started catching whiffs of alcohol on you, and I'm sitting there thinking, you're driving. You know, you're obviously functioning.
Right.
But I know you can't pass a breathalyzer. Mm-hmm. You're going to pick up your kid in the same state of, what do you call it?
Drunkenness.
Drunkenness, yeah. You got me in the car with you. And as we're talking, I'm listening to you justify, and it's the biggest bunch of shit I've ever heard. And I remember I was getting so mad because I was trying to play it, trying to be your friend and trying to be your buddy, and you know. And I remember it was time I was so aggravated with you, and you're just driving, you're blah 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 blah, blah just talking up a storm. Right. And I remember I literally had to turn my head and look out the window. I'll never forget it. And I remember I was just getting so fucking mad, you know, because I'm sitting there and I literally remember going, "Do you really believe this shit that you're saying to me?"
So
you know what I mean?
Yep.
Do you really believe this?
Right.
You know, and. Ended up picking David up, coming back home real quick, and then I think it was like something else happened. It went in a very large window. It was like 3 days between that, whatever that was, and that conversation.
You called me July the 5th.
Yeah, something else happened. I was like, you know, this ain't working.
Right.
You know, the definition of insanity.
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
You're going to have to hear it. And this is where my own scars of it come into play, where I've already been on this island of addiction. I had real estate there.
Right.
And I remember once I was done with that, I still say this day, I am not visiting that island ever again. Right. If it's anything looks like that island, I don't even care if it's a picture of the other island on this new island. I want nothing to do with it. Right. And then here you two are, my bestest friends in the world.
Trying to justify, and that's
buying real estate on the island.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was one thing I would always point to, and this is typical addiction. I didn't want you to observe my flaws, so I would always try to point to Chris's flaws.
Right.
Or some. Again, it's always somebody else.
Yep.
That way you don't see me.
Put the spotlight off of you.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's exactly. Yep.
And so it became, I felt like it became easier and easier and easier to do that until, like I said, Chris put the brakes on that car for me. And then you kind of brought the driver to,
yeah.
You know, because you're echoing the same thing that she told me. Even though she happened to be drunk at that point, you know, and again, we're talking about different times here, but when she told me that was a long time before you called me on July the 5th, right? So even though she put the brakes on the car, I was starting to slow down. You brought the driver to. At that point, it's just like, shit, I'm headed for this cliff.
Yeah, and it was funny was too. I would talk to her like the day or two after one of her colossal screw ups.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, but the same thing would happen with my ex-wife. You know, after the event, man, they have the clarity of, you know, the book of Revelation or something.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they know nothing I say per se is going to give them any more clarity. Chris would tell, but Chris would do the same thing. So I got sober Chris now by 24 hours, 36 hours, and she owns all of her crap. She knows exactly the things she needs to do to make sure it happened again. But Lance, you need to talk to Drew, because while he's ripping my ass, he's got this, and then she's outing all your stuff.
Right.
And then I'm over here going, both these people don't need to be driving any car.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It sucks, man. It sucks.
That was the
yeah.
That was, I mean, like I said, July the 5th for me was that turning point. You offered to take me to anywhere I wanted to go in order to get my head straight.
Yeah,
We've always said that, you know, any change that occurs has to start on the inside.
Right.
And I remember you clearly telling me, okay, wherever I got to take you on this planet, I will take you as long as you get your head straight.
Yeah, I had just gotten back from the beach, and for me, the ocean, there was something rejuvenating about the ocean. I walk on the beach. I don't even care if he's walking on the beach. I can be in the condo looking out over
The ocean.
The ocean is my calming place. It's one of those things where, you know, I've even said I need to quit doing this once a year vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I just come down for a weekend,
Right.
That would be so much healthy. I don't say healthy, but what they call it now, wellness. You know,
Right.
Man, that would be so good for my soul. Because I can. It just everything goes away. I can work on my own stuff, clear my own head, reset myself, remotivate myself, blah blah blah. So fast forward now, I just got back from vacation. I think you all had another disaster. And we were talking, I was thinking, if I can get you out of this environment and get you to a place where you can take a TV time out,
Right.
you know, so that's why I said, where do you want to go? I'll pay for, I don't care where it's at. I don't care. Because I was desperate too. I knew we were reaching a point where if you're going to continue, and I hate to even utter these words, but I'm going to have to cut the kite.
Right.
You know, and I remember Chris one day even called me. My friend Mel from Texas was in. We were driving. We just left Pottery Place, and Chris called me trying to rip my ass. Because fast forward, you were to a point where you were giving her an ultimatum about you're going to get sober, we're going to get divorced. And I had reiterated with you, dude, if she doesn't get sober, you're going to have to get divorced. And she called me mad that I wasn't a loyal friend.
Right. I remember that.
And I loaded the shotgun, and I had to, and you know, by the end of that conversation, she was, I'm sorry, Lance, I'm sorry, I love you, and I love you too, but you know, but scroll. I'm gonna 6 month story, as everybody, my friends like to say. That was the concept behind it. I'll get you and bring Chris,
Right.
get you out of this environment, clear your head, work it out. So anyway, you decided Beckley was the place to go.
Gettysburg was the place, and I remember I chuckled when you told me that. I chuckled to myself. I must have done it audibly because you stopped. I mean, you got stone cold silent.
Yeah,
you're like, you motherfucker! If you say Gettysburg, I'm gonna kick your ass. I mean, you immediately started right in on that.
Yeah, I said, you know, I'll pay for. I don't care where it's at. I don't care. You name a place that is your Zen place that you and you sat there and you went and I went, what? Just what's so funny? And you went, I'm scared to tell you. And I went, why is he scared to tell me? I'm taking heat. If this son of a bitch says Gettysburg, I swear, because if anybody that knows Drew, he is beyond a Civil War buff. He's a Civil War addict.
Yes,
yeah.
Civil War, 35 years.
And I remember I said, if you say Gettysburg, I'm going to kick your ass. And you started laughing, and you go, yeah, you know. And that's like, I said, screw it, let's go. I'll grab my.
I remember that too. You're just
Yeah.
You took a second to bitch at me. It was like, God, dude, I can't believe
Gettysburg.
All right, fine,
we'll
we'll go.
Gettysburg to clear their head. But, okay.
And so to make things to clear up the record, we were driving to Gettysburg a couple weeks later, and Lance had asked me about needing a Garmin or directions. I said,
Yes.
oh no.
So we're
oh no.
I'm taking over.
All
I
right.
tell it better than you do. So we're driving. on the interstate there.
We're by South Charleston exit.
Yeah,
Jefferson Road.
I remember thinking it as we were passing the Capitol. You know, I'm from Kentucky, so I can get me to Lexington without any assistance. I can get me to Charleston without any assistance. Past those 2 points, I need a map. I need Google. I need a. And I remember you're driving, I'm in the front seat, Chris is in the back, and we're BSing, e-hauling, having a great old time, and road trip. And I just happened to look over, and I'm like, he's got no map. He's got no, you know. So I said, hey, dude, I just happened to notice. I know the road forks off here in like 2 or 3 different directions. You don't have a map. Do you know where you're going? You're like, oh man, yeah, dude, I know exactly where I'm going. I used to skip school and drive up to Gettysburg on the weekends. I would do this like 3 times a month. I mean, and then you got real serious and somber, and you're like, you know, Lance, I swear, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I really feel in a past life I was a Civil War soldier, and I fought in Gettysburg. There was something about this place that just caused me. I could get here blindfolded. I know this place like the back of my hand, and I'm like, oh, okay. All right, well, yeah, because past life, you know, I can't argue with that. I go, okay, all right, well, all right, then he knows where he's going. He made this trip 20 million times in high school. This is his soulmate, you know, to an extent.
Right.
Anyway, 5 minutes later,
it's quiet. It's quiet in the car because I've realized at this point that as I'm telling Lance all this stuff about Gettysburg and my history and association with Gettysburg, I realized I missed that fork.
You took the wrong turn. You took the wrong turn.
And so now instead of heading north to Gettysburg, I'm heading south to Beckley.
And the dilemma is how do
I break this?
Yeah. Do I say anything, or do I just try to? Because there's no way I'm not going to know a U-turn, you know.
Yeah, somebody's going to notice I'm making a U here.
And so anyway, he goes, well, shit. And I go, what? I'm thinking he forgot something. Well, what? And he went, I'm going the wrong way. And I went, what do you mean you're going the wrong way? You're past life here. You take this. Where are we going? And you're like, Beckley.
And hence the term was born, or the phrase was born. Instead of going to Gettysburg, I go to Beckley.
Go to Beckley. And I remember I found a book, and it said The Ghosts of Gettysburg. And I took a Post-it note and put Beckley and sent you The Ghosts of Beckley, yeah. And then I was laughing with the Going Back to Cali song.
Yeah.
Going back to Beckley, Beckley.
I will never live that down,
going
ever.
Back to Beckley. I don't think so.
All right, so we're in Gettysburg. So I have a picture here. I want to pull up on screen. This is a picture of me. I'm standing in a dugout about 2 weeks prior to July the 5th. So this is prior to whenever you called me. And you looked at, I showed you this picture earlier. I mean, this guy just looks
like a house.
Looks like a house. Yeah. He looks like a house. Yeah, no doubt about it. And he,
now I know where I came up with that. Yeah.
He looks miserable. I mean, he just looks miserable. And so 2 weeks later, but roughly 2 weeks later, you call me and we have the conversation. Mm-hmm. You say Gettysburg. I say I'm in.
You got to be sober.
But I got to be sober.
Yeah.
So absolutely, July the 6th was my first day of sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
I worked and it was work. I worked the next couple weeks, just paying attention to every single minute. And I had a goal every single day I woke up, and my goal was to make it to my pillow, lay my head down on that pillow, sober. That was it. I didn't give a shit what happened.
Right.
And so early on, that formulated in my head, the formula anyway, I should say, it popped in my mind. This is the formula I need to follow for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Just every day, one day at a time, one step at a time, which was consistent with what I knew AA was around. But again, 2 weeks in, I wasn't fully invested in AA.
And you probably still have that brain fog.
Yeah, I totally did.
Yeah.
Totally did. But that was what... So we drive to Gettysburg, and I'm up at Gettysburg, and I asked you this yesterday, were you looking for anything in particular from me when we were leaving Gettysburg? Was there any kind of apprehension or any signs or anything like that at all that I'm not sure where he's at? Or was it he's this is fucked. He's not, you know. What were you seeing when we were at Gettysburg, as we were leaving Gettysburg?
So going up to Gettysburg, it was like a 2-week window. But I told you I wasn't taking you up drunk.
Right.
You had to be sober, at least sober a week.
Right.
You know, I wasn't going to go up there and babysit.
Right.
Been there, done that. I'm not doing that no more. And that would also show me if you were serious about this.
Yep.
Or you just tell me what I want to hear, and as soon as I leave the room, you go back
Right.
and start doing your thing.
Right.
So, but I knew too, because you were checking in with me. That was another thing again. Where
Telltale
I knew,
sign.
Yeah, it was because I never asked you to do that.
Right.
You know, I remember you just on your own. You ripped your ass that night, and you know, whenever it resonated like that, you started sending me pictures of you up at Planet Fitness.
Right.
Hey, it's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm up here, you know, running. And you
Right.
send me a picture of the treadmill, and send me a picture of you.
Right.
And I'm okay. Well, that's a start. I didn't even ask him to do that.
Right.
So you're already showing me you're taking the steps.
Right.
And then I think another reason too, because we've known each other for so long, I know when something takes hold of you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whenever you got your mind made up with
About
something, you have a laser focus with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was looking for that as well. You know, which these other things leading up to it were telling me, okay, he's on the right track. He's, you know,
Right.
if he wasn't, I wouldn't hear from him, or you know.
I'd be off the radar. I'd be off the radar. Again.
Back off the radar,
Right.
yeah. And I think that was another reason how you were able to get away with it so long with me anyway, because, you know, you had the baseball schedule going on,
Right.
travel ball, dance, job.
Yeah.
There's so much that where you can say, hey man, I'm just busy.
Right.
And there's truth to it all. I mean, there
Right.
is absolutely truth. Everybody suffers from that.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody would like to, you know, hang out with their friends more. Just life gets in the way. But you know, looking back, I think you were using that as a shield.
Oh, it totally was.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You know, and then at Gettysburg, it was well, it was our conversations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I could tell too. I could tell while you're up there, you're in that Zen place that you,
Yeah, right.
you laugh about it, but that is your place.
Oh, it is.
It is. And I could see you working stuff out in your head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one thing I could tell whenever you're telling me about the 10th Cavalry. I'm making this up. The 10th Cavalry charge of Jebediah Pickett. You know, and I can tell when you're just reciting.
Oh, no.
When you're just reciting
It
history.
was George Pickett. It was
Yeah.
Pickett's charge, third day of battle. But okay.
Yes, that's the one.
Okay.
But then I can also tell as I'm watching you, and like, you know, we come up over a ridge, Cemetery Ridge.
Mm.
Take that. And
Oh. All right. Was that Union or Confederate side?
so anyway, but I could see you looking over that, and
The wheels.
you're in your own head,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And there were times we would split up.
Yeah.
But I would shadow you guys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd keep my distance, but I was watching to see if you and Chris were grab assing, or if this is fun, or
Right.
But you know, that wasn't what was it. You were. I could tell there was a man working stuff out in his own head.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
you took a picture of me when I was sitting on Little Round Top, and like I said, I was only like 2 weeks in.
Right.
I think it was. I think it was only like 2 weeks in. It was July 17th. I remember that. But I think it was the morning we were leaving Round Top, or we were leaving Gettysburg. It was on a Sunday, and you took a picture of me sitting by myself because I knew we were leaving, so it was kind of like my goodbye, if you will.
Or here we go.
Or here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was my goodbye to Gettysburg, but this is where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
I've got 2 weeks behind me, you know. But in that picture, and I'm going to pull it up here. In this picture, what's so telling to me is, I mean, I'm looking out over the Valley of Death. I'm looking down towards Devil's Den area. I already look different, and I'm only 2 weeks in.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I look at that and I see physical differences.
Correct.
not maybe 5-10 pounds lost, maybe ish, something like that. But what's striking to me is that look on my face. Yes, I'm in my Zen place. Yes, I'm in my, but yeah, my Zen place, as you say. But to your point about me working things out in my head, that I feel like that laser focus was getting focused.
Yeah,
at that moment.
I
In that picture, anyway.
I believe that in order to obtain balance in your life, you've got to take that journey inward and face that dark side. You can't see, I'm a nerd, the light side of the force, but you're never going to find that light side until you address that dark side.
Yep.
You have to have that, and it sucks.
You have to have a conversation.
Yes, you have to confront it.
Yeah.
And it sucks, and there is nothing worse that when you have to do, and that's something you have to do. Hey, look, I can rip your ass all day long. You can hear all these motivational YouTube videos all day long.
Right.
I can present you scientific statistics all day long until you want to turn that, the accountability mirror. I think is what Jen has said. Until you want to look in that mirror and address that guy, you don't get out.
Yeah.
And there was a guy taking that journey inward, having that conversation with himself. That's what I see with that.
We were at that pizza place down there, and I remember saying it there that the drunk Drew was staying on the battlefield. He was dead. And I was leaving him on the battlefield because coming back, I knew I had my work cut out for me.
Right.
I knew that. Now, and again, it was one of those things where that 2-week period coming up to Gettysburg, leading up to it, I was putting all these things in place to starting these new routines.
Yeah,
these new safety methods.
Yeah, I remember because we're going to Gettysburg. It's a road trip. I'm not even thinking about eating healthy. That's the last thing on my mind.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And I remember you're showing up with your little
I had ham and cheese rolls.
Yeah,
and I remember pulling over. I pulled over at a rest area or something like that, and I was like, "Oh, it's time to eat." And I got pulled over, and you're like, "What?
What are you doing?
You're pulling into a rest. You're eating." And I was like, and I pulled out. And I had a cooler back there and had my food already.
Your little, and it wasn't. Yeah, it was the keto friendly.
Right.
Ham and cheese slices, and I'm going. I'm not eating this. Listen, man, we've got more important things going on. But that was another tell of, okay, well,
another sign.
Yeah, because like you said, we're at the pizza place, and dude, I'm getting a pepperoni pizza.
Right.
And you're over here.
Buffalo wings.
Yeah, trying to make healthy choices.
Yeah.
And I'm going, all right, well, this is.
So when we came back from Gettysburg, again, I was only 2 weeks in, but did you have any apprehension at that point forward?
No, I knew at Gettysburg, this was where the, 20-some years of friendship, I know you enough to know that when the spark ignites, it's a force fire.
Right.
And I knew the spark had ignited. I knew. I even went back and said, I even specifically said, I'm not worried about Drew. Drew's on his way.
Right.
I know that Drew, that he's on his way. I am worried about Chris. Right. I don't think it took with Chris.
She had a little bit further to go.
Yeah. But I knew.
So when did you?
I wasn't worried about it.
When did that nail get put into the coffin, so to speak? You were talking about the generation yesterday. Was that was when the nail was put in the coffin for you, knowing, okay, he's good. He's really, really good.
Well, yeah. Well, again, the when you said you've been talking about the problems that you were seeing, you were going to, and I'm speaking out of my league or out of my, what do you call it?
Domain.
Yeah. I've never visited an alcohol, so I don't know exactly how the whole system works.
Right.
But you were talking to me about it, and you were talking about going to the meetings and the whole system of Alcoholics Anonymous and the way that, and you were like, there's things about this that I don't think are working no more. And,
right.
And when I question it, I'm getting my pee-pee smacked,
right.
And I'm catching a lot of flack about it. And so I okay, well, let's talk about it. What's not working? Tell me why.
Right.
And here, so you start. I said, well, then, dude, why don't you just start your own thing? And you're like, I don't know about that. And I'm like, it's the same thing we did with wrestling.
Yep.
And for the people at home, that's how me and Drew met. he was a professional wrestler. I was wanting to become one, and met somebody that drew. It was Matt was supposed to be your last.
Yeah, Matt was going to be my last
Yeah.
training. I was done with wrestling. I wanted out.
I ran into Matt, and I was secretly trying to get into it because I didn't know if the police department would let me do it. So I was like, well, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. But I'd met Matt. I was going to go to Florida, and I had met Matt. And he said, he was going to be a pro wrestler, and there was a guy up in. Where was you at?
Taze Valley.
Taze Valley, yeah. And I thought, well, Taze Valley's a lot closer than Florida.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm not looking to get into WWE. I'm just wanting to hit the local circuit,
Right.
live my little dream, and I'm good. And I thought, well, this guy's already been wrestling. He'll already have the connections. This is a perfect one. And so had Matt, I think it was a phone call or a meeting?
It was a phone call.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was trying to talk you. I was trying to put you off on another promoter
Yes.
up in Ohio because it was closer to you. In
Which
my
it
mind.
wasn't. Yeah.
And because I didn't want nothing to do. I didn't want anything to do with.
You were
I
done.
was out.
Yeah,
I was 1 foot out. I had a kid on the way.
Yep. And I remember talking you into it, and then but once I talked you into it, then it progressed to, because we had really good chemistry, and I said, hey, you should stay, you should work, you should, and this would talk you into that, but then after that we started wrestling with these other organizations, didn't like the way they were doing things, and it was the same thing. It was, why don't we start our own wrestling organization?
No, man, I don't know. No, that's just a lot of work.
Yeah, and I remember going, no, we can do this. We can do this. And then I get the phone call. I've been thinking about it. I think you're right. I think we ought to do this. And then, but then that's the thing. After that, the next thing I know, we have a wrestling organization. I contributed $10 to get the license, maybe. You know what I mean? I'm like, I guess we need a ring. I already got that. Well, what else? We need insurance. I already got that. We need a venue. I already got that. What about workers? I already got that. I'm like, we just need to. The only thing I need is to help with a name, which I didn't like. But I got outvoted. That's cool.
So it was the same thing for you.
It was the
seeing me.
same concept. So here we are now, the guy on the rock at Gettysburg, and you're calling me about the
Problems in AA.
and I'm like, well, why don't you start your own? Why don't you everything you're saying makes sense, and I can see,
Right.
we can talk about this or not. It's up to you, but. How people get so stuck in tradition, and people get so stuck in routine, and people get so stuck in the way things have been, that it becomes outdated, and it doesn't work.
It's no longer applicable.
Yes, it worked here, and it was great here for that time of life, or for that culture, for that, but it doesn't work now. The concepts you might bring the same framework, but you have to adjust, and I said, well, start. Why don't you? And anyway, you know what? Yeah. And then boom, and I'm going, oh yeah, this guy's. I'm not worried about this at all now.
See,
You got something bigger than yourself now.
right.
I'm worried about you. Chris is still having some issues. Not right now, but then.
Right.
And I'm worried that her issues are going to make you relapse.
Right.
But now at this point. You've started your own thing now that's bigger than you, and now there's other people involved, and I ain't gotta worry about you.
Right.
You're well on your way. It's inspiring. I've told you that. I'm proud of you. To watch the journey. You know what I mean?
Well, I always call it the American Idol syndrome.
Okay.
So,
explain.
And I'm going to date myself really bad, but going back and you've watched the first few seasons of American Idol,
Right.
You meet these unassuming people from small towns all across the country, and look at this sweet little girl, she's so sweet and innocent, and blah blah blah. She could sing really good too,
Right.
And then over the course of 4 months, 5 months, week in, week out, you tune in to watch this little girl grow and develop her skills. And then all of a sudden, in May, this little girl wins the very first American Idol and goes on to become
Superstar.
Superstar.
Yeah.
Kelly Clarkson. and it's not like, had I tuned in May to watch the final episode and never watched, had I watched the first episode and tuned in to watch the final episode,
Right.
I'd have missed the story in between.
Yeah.
I'd have missed that journey. But part of what made the finale of American Idol so big was I got to watch her progression.
You were actually along vicariously in the journey.
Yeah, we got to see. We were drawn into the journey. We got to see it firsthand. This morning, on the monologue, I was talking about when too much is too much, and where, for me, it was like I had a ringside seat, a front row seat. Maybe in our old parlance,
ringside, yeah.
But I had a front row seat to a very predictable movie, more predictable than Titanic. That my life was going to
get the Titanic reference.
Yeah, I had to.
Yeah,
I had to. But it was more predictable because I knew. I mean, I was piece by piece watching my life fall apart, and I knew I was going to end.
Yeah.
So when it was too much in the sense that I stand up and say, we need to hold, we need to pause because I got to rewrite this ending.
Right.
And I go back to rewriting the story that I think should be, and so for me, and I shared that this morning. Every day we wake up, we have a chance to rewrite our movie.
Yeah, Diamond Dallas Page said the greatest or the biggest story you'll ever hear is the one between your two ears.
Yep.
And that's the one you tell yourself.
Yep.
And that is
the key though is, and this is where AA, I firmly believe in the 12 steps of AA. I firmly believe in the fellowship, the way it was originally designed. I am concerned though, to your point from earlier, that the way it's applied now, it's not working because we have so many people going back out repeatedly, going back out and using again. And I'm not just talking about alcoholics, I'm talking about drug addicts. I'm talking about people who are addicted to substances and they abuse them. And and that was my challenge with the Joshua generation was the things that these we're still carrying on the framework. From 1940s, when it worked back in 1940s.
Right.
My dad was born in 25. He fought in World War II. I was raised in that 40s, mindset. That's when he was in his prime.
Right.
And that's kind of how I was raised based upon that mindset. Unfortunately, society is not in the 1940s anymore. We have there's a different society, different, and it goes back to what you said before we actually started recording. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So if we keep doing the same things that we've been doing all these years, just because that's the way they've always been done,
the way it's always been done,
and your results are actually getting less and less and less.
Right.
Logically, rationally, and I always prided myself on being logical and rational.
Right.
But logically and rationally, I'm going, if I'm getting less and less return on my investment, why the hell do I keep putting an investment in the first place?
I used to say stuff like, if this was a football coach and this was your percentage, I remember like with the methadone clinic, I spoke to the director down there, and they were like, well, we have such a good success rate. It's on par with terminally ill cancer patients. And I went, wait a minute, I thought terminally ill meant you don't live, you don't come back.
Right.
And I said, well, what is that? And she said, it was like, what was it?
3%.
3%, I think is what she said. And of course, I immediately default and go, that's a 97% failure rate.
Right.
And I addressed that. I said, and she said, well, if we can just save one, it's worth it. Okay, and I get that concept.
Right.
Hey, absolutely, I get the concept. But somewhere in that, if we can just win one football game, it's a win. No, it's not.
Right.
You've lost the other 12.
The other 97% that she's talking about, that's someone's kid, that's someone's husband, someone's
that's
wife.
A fail. Hey, like you talked about with the return on investment. If I invest this much money, I'm only getting this much back, and I've made this much of a loss. I would rather flip those numbers.
Right.
Personally, you know,
But if
we
we
have a
keep
nice
investing it, and
let's keep doing the same thing we're doing.
just
yeah.
because that's the way we've always been doing it.
Right.
That was always my challenge with
Yeah.
AA. Now again, I'm in no way knocking the concept of AA, the 12 steps.
Yes, there's the core foundation.
Right. And
But
that,
you know, if you build a house based upon a certain environment, and the environment completely changes,
yes.
you know, if we're building igloos and the climate changes, and now it's 95 degrees,
Igloo's not going to
why are we still building igloos?
Right.
I don't care if we build igloos up here for the last 200 years.
Well, it's the way we've always been doing it.
It's the way we've been- I think,
And
yeah.
it's funny because the big book that that we read from, that we learned our step work from the big book.
Mm-hmm.
It even says that in the realm of the material, and this is in chapter 4, in the realm of the material, men's minds are fettered by superstitions, traditions, and all sorts of fixed ideas. So in other words, we're not even open to change. We're not even open to the suggestion of change.
Right.
Oh no, this is just the way we've always done it.
Mhm.
But yet, and in that part of the book, it's trying to convince us that it's okay to change. That now that part of the book is dealing with people who say there is no God and I can't do faith and all that. And so that part of the book, and even the context in which that line is written, it's trying to convey the message of you need to be open to the idea of having faith. You need to be open to a conception of God.
But you can apply that to everything.
Everything. That's exactly
that
it.
is such a that is
Yep.
people's aversions. Well, hey, we've heard this. Sometimes your comfort zone is the most uncomfortable place to be.
Yep.
And people live in their no matter how miserable it is, that's a comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you're used to it. You know that comfort or that, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's the same concept. You know?
Well, I think back to going back to, you know, my goal July 6th was just to stop drinking, but I also said, okay, go big or go home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I changed. I had stopped drinking, but I also changed what I was drinking, like sodas, and I stopped sodas, I stopped juices, I stopped all that shit. I stopped eating carbohydrates. And I remember on the way back from Gettysburg, actually, we stopped at a Denny's, and you guys peer pressured me into eating carbohydrates that day, on that Sunday.
I do remember that. Well, you were craving something.
I was craving something. I don't remember what it
waffles or
was.
something, or
No, but you guys got me to eat a hamburger with bun, a baked cheeseburger with buns.
Yeah, you were looking. Yeah,
and the French fries, the French fries too, and I was like, I felt so horrible because I hadn't had any carbohydrates for like 14, 17 days or something like that. 12 days. And so when I drank a soda there too. It was a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And that I don't know if you know this, but that was the last time I drank soda. That was the last time I drank soda.
I had a purpose for that.
Now but that was my first cheat day that I gave myself. I gave myself like 2 more cheat days, maybe the next following 2 weeks, and I said, you know what? I'm not even interested. The last cheat meal that I had was a 15-piece shrimp from Long John Silver's, and that was probably 2 weeks after we got back from Gettysburg.
That is some crappy shrimp.
And but I loved it. But it was good. But I remember just how horrible I felt because I'd been eating carb free, and so going back to that change thing. I was making all these changes, and I wanted to kind of get somewhat healthy. And I remember thinking, I'll just lose 30 pounds. I'll get down to 210. I was 240 whenever I started. I'll get down to 210. But I got to do something, right? So I'd go to the gym, and I'd try to run. And my first time run was out here on this triangle out here, and it was tough, man. It was more like run 5 steps, walk 10.
Yeah.
That type of thing. It was tough. I had to step out of my comfort zone. You're lifting weights. You go and get a 25-pound dumbbell and you curl that thing. The first 5 or 6 times you curling, first 5 and 6 sets of you doing that, your bicep is going to get sore. It's going to be painful. It's going to hurt.
Like I said the other day.
Eventually, your body's going to have that homeostatic response, and it'll start adapting to it and go, okay, this 25 pounds is easy.
Strength is not made in comfort.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
Agreed. And so I think, and we've talked about this too, how that mindset is everything.
Yeah.
That mindset is everything.
No, my mindset is. I believe that mindset is everything.
Like how you view, like, so it's funny because you said
Perspective. Yeah.
you said the lady said 3%. You really went to, that's a 97% failure rate.
Right.
I remember David was we were somewhere, I think somewhere in Kentucky. And I don't know how much you know about baseball. I don't think you know a whole lot because you don't like it. Is what you told me.
So boring.
It's not boring.
Go ahead.
But David was playing a game. He was pitching.
Okay.
And I don't remember how old he was. I think he was 12 or something like that. David threw what's called a perfect game.
So he no hitter.
There's no hitters are separate.
Okay.
Perfect games are harder to get than no hitters.
All right. What's a perfect game? Give me
A
the
perfect
definition.
game means no walks, no hits, no runs, no errors, nothing.
Okay.
And so he's on the mound, and of course our offense, our batting lineup was just it was impressive. But David only pitched 4 innings because the offense had racked up the score so much.
Okay.
So really, David only had to get 12 outs. He only had to pitch for 12 batters. And of the 12 batters, not only did he throw a perfect game, no hits, no walks, no runs, no errors, he had 11 strikeouts. Of the 12 batters he faced, he had 11 strikeouts.
Okay.
And the only time the ball was hit, it was a pop-up into the air right back to him. So in the scorebook, David was fully responsible for securing all 12 outs of that game.
Right.
And then, of course, the offense came in and ran up the score so bad, they mercied him. That's why we only did 4 innings. Anyway, David struck out twice in that game when he was at the plate.
Okay.
And so going back to that perspective, I remember after the game, I was like, "You just struck out twice." Mind you, I was drunk.
Right.
I was drunk. It's like, I can't. You went 1 for 3 at the plate. You had 2 strikeouts, back-to-back strikeouts. What were you thinking? And he's like, "Dad, I don't know. I think the umpire was just off." And the umpire, why don't you just work? And by the time his coach came on, he's like, "I've never seen this in all the years I've coached baseball." I said, "What was it?" And he said, David threw a perfect game." And I was like, oh. I said, "Well, surely the other." He said, "No, that's what I'm talking." He said, "What I haven't seen in all the years I've coached baseball, I've never seen a kid who throws the perfect game be responsible for all the outs in the game." And that's when he pointed out to me, David had 11 strikeouts, and the only ball that was hit went straight up in the air, and David caught it. So David was responsible for all 12 outs.
Right.
But here I am. I'm pissed off about the 2 strikeouts that he had to play. And that's when it hit me. I was like, oh shit. My son just threw a perfect
Same game. That guy sees everything he did right. You only saw everything he did wrong.
Yeah. And so I think that's where we're going back to that addiction, because I didn't want you to see what I was doing wrong. Because I wanted that spotlight off of me. Let me turn and put it around somebody else.
Right.
Chris.
That's addiction 101.
Yeah. What did you? I'm assuming you had similar experiences in your marriage with the addiction, as far as take the light off of me.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But back on the perspective thing with you, from an addiction perspective, when you're wrestling through this, do you only see everything you did wrong?
Yes.
And you don't see anything good?
Yeah. So
does that make sense?
Nope.
That's a question, but I think I already know the answer. But
I knew everything I did wrong.
Right.
I knew. I knew everything I did wrong. No one had to tell me.
Right.
And I think that's why a lot of addicts are resistant to having those conversations. Because they already know. And that's part of the reason why we're addicts. We have that addiction is because we're trying to suppress that.
I always used to say, as a police officer, I would meet somebody that drank, and they'd say, "Well, I drink, but I don't do that weed."
Yeah, I don't do that weed. I think it's such a bad thing.
And then you have somebody that smokes weed, and they go, "Well, yeah, but I don't do that crack." And then you have somebody that does crack, and they're, "Well, I don't do that meth." And then you have somebody that does meth, and they go, "Well, I don't do that heroin," or vice versa, actually, heroin. But then when you hit the meth head, they go, "Yeah, I'm fucked up." I've never heard because where else do you go with that?
Right.
I'm not a child molester, I mean, that's your other only left field option to make yourself
Look good.
look good. Yeah, to make yourself sound like you're not as bad as fill in the blank.
This guy.
Yeah.
So, and to answer your question, yeah, I knew everything I did wrong, but I always, that's one of the reasons why I drank was because I was so ashamed of all the things I'd done wrong. Although I still kept on doing the same thing wrong.
Right.
But the biggest shame, at least for me, was knowing that alcohol was the one thing I could not control.
Right.
Period. I mean, I was Mr. Logical, Mr. Rational, Mr. Disciplined. I was educated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being a high school dropout in West Virginia who went and got his GED, I was a pretty semi-intelligent guy.
Right.
You know, so, and that was what we were talking earlier. In my mind, I wanted to be back there 20 years ago when I was pretty semi-intelligent.
Right.
I was rational, I was logical and reasonable and all that. In my mind, I wanted to be there, and so, but I knew I wasn't, so that's why I drank, so I didn't have to remind myself I wasn't there. I wasn't the person I used to be, and that's why I would drink, because if I drank, then I didn't have to live with that guilt and that shame of I'm not who I used to be, and then also I didn't have to hear somebody else telling me that I'm not the person that I used to be, that I thought I was.
I can remember Chris telling me, you know, I'm not her. I'm not like her, being my ex-wife. I'm not like her. I'm not like her. And there came a point where I finally said, yeah, you are.
Mm-hmm.
You just have a different addiction.
Yeah.
Hers was pills. Yours, I have news for you.
Mm-hmm.
You are. Ask your children.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when I told you that day when I was up here and we were all talking and baby Kay came in, who's now 17, and but she came in and started, you know, was being polite and respectful. I don't even want to say ripping Chris's ass, but she was telling truth.
Right.
You know, Mom, this is fill in the blank, blah 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 blah. And Chris tried to shut her up and tried to
shut her down.
Yeah, and I said, no, let her talk, because I was curious. You know, I can, being on the other end of it, I can see the damage that it does to the kids. And I remember having these conversations with you. You know, you're hurting your kids right now. And I don't remember what Baby Kay said, because I remember as she went on a roll, she wasn't being disrespectful. But I remember everything she said was true.
Yeah.
And I also remember thinking, this kid's got more logic and clarity and is more tuned in to what's going on
than both of us combined.
Both of you combined,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I'm talking to her yesterday because I didn't remember what she said, but she said too that I even told you guys, I could call CPS on you all right now.
I vaguely remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you all would lose your kids.
Mm-hmm.
You all would. You guys are that, and you're all sitting here saying, I'm not like her, I'm not like this, I'm not like that. It's the self-deception.
Well, because we didn't want to admit that we were powerless over alcohol.
Yeah, hadn't had that conversation with the dark side.
Yeah, didn't want to see it. And that's why I would drink, so I didn't have to have that conversation with the dark side. And you know, because I knew if I did, I was going to have to face the realization that everything I thought about myself in my head was all a lie. I wasn't the same guy I was 20 years ago. I wasn't Mr. Rational, Mr. Logical. You even said yourself, I mean, the shit that was coming out of my mouth, it was insane.
It was stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember just going, are you listening to yourself? Or do you really believe this?
Right.
Because this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Yep.
Yeah.
And at the time, I believed it only because I didn't want to admit. You know, I didn't want to.
Well, it's that story you're telling yourself between your two ears.
I didn't want to.
Whether it's true or it's a lie, it's the story you're telling yourself. You know.
I didn't want to have that conversation with that Dexter's Dark Passenger.
Yeah.
Dexter's Dark Passenger.
Yeah.
And but I had to come face to face with him. The difference for me was, you know, you taking that step and saying, I will take you wherever you want to go. That gave me something to look forward to as far as motivation, but hope. I mean, Gettysburg is my place. There's no doubt about it. And to your point about, you know, you had to see just how serious I was. I believe God told me that same thing on July the 7th.
Yeah, you mentioned something about that yesterday, about
Yep.
waking up.
Yeah, so July the 6th, you'd already had the conversation with me. You had already told me you'd take me to Gettysburg. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I remember I was on the phone with you when I took my last drink. But, so July the 6th, do or die, right? This is it. Where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
Everything you told him last night, was that bullshit? All right, we're about to find out.
Right.
And so I don't think I left the house at all on July the 6th, but I would say by 1 o'clock, the tremors were already starting, the cold sweats. And as the day progressed, it got worse. Everything got worse and worse.
Right.
But I had this pressure in my chest. I'll never, to this day, I don't even have to close my eyes to think about it.
Yeah.
The pressure in my chest was unrelenting. It was not going away.
Right.
No matter what I tried to do. And I remember that was the day I even went out and tried to jog around the triangle. I had Kirsten, who was not licensed driver yet, I had her drive my truck around. Followed by, July the 6th was the single most worst day of my life, physically, from a physiology perspective.
Withdrawal perspective.
Withdrawals.
Yeah.
It was horrible. But again, I knew that I had to get sober, that you were going to, you were making a financial investment. You were putting your money where your mouth was. Was I going to do the same?
Right.
So July the 6th, I'm going to have to go through this. And I remember thinking, physiological withdrawals usually only last about 5 days. So I just got to make it 5 days. And like I said, as the day went on, everything got progressively worse and worse and worse and worse. Fortunately, Chad sent me that Andy Frisilla video, the 5 fucking days. And that anger that I had towards him kind of fueled me for the rest of the day.
Right.
And so by the end of day one, I didn't care what tomorrow bring as far as pain and withdrawal symptoms. I made it through today. Surely tomorrow's got to be easier than today. But I'm just going to make it through tomorrow with using the same anger I have towards Andy Frisilla. And so I remember I texted Chad late that night, and no, I'm sorry, he texted me. It was about 11 o'clock. He texted me. He said, "How'd it go?" And I said, "I made it."
This is day one or day?
This is day one.
Okay, day one.
This is day one. In day one, I'm sitting on the edge of my bed.
Right.
The pain's in my chest. I can hear my heart beating in my eardrums.
Yeah.
And it was like I had a stethoscope in. Right.
Right.
It was so loud. But I remember he said, "How'd it go?" And I said, "I made it." And he said, "Good. Now let's do it again." I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know if you know this, but this sucks.
Yeah, I was thinking that, And so, anyway, I said, okay. Again, I was at this point. I didn't care about Chad. I didn't care about you. I didn't care about Chris. I didn't care about anybody because I was out to prove this motherfucker on the video wrong.
Right.
So let's hurry up and get on to day 2. And so I went to sleep, and I woke up day 2, and I fell asleep flat on my back. I woke up flat on my back. I must not have moved that night at all in my sleep because I woke up in the same position.
Right.
And I remember when I opened my eyes, I saw the ceiling, and I thought, I don't feel anything. Shit, am I dead? I literally thought I died.
Right.
And I had to sit there for a second, and I thought I felt my chest, or I thought I felt my breath, breathing.
Breathing, yeah.
And I started wiggling my fingertips, just my fingertips. I was afraid to move my arms because I didn't know if I was going to have an arm. So I was like, I better start small.
How's this what do you call outer body thing work?
I was wiggling my fingertips, wiggle my toes, and I do remember I looked, mind you, I'm laying on my back, but I looked down, I couldn't see my feet. Then I was like, oh yeah, I have to raise up. So I had to raise up to look over
your belly,
my belly, so I could see my feet. And I'm laying flat.
I'm dead, and I still have a gut.
This sucks. I'm still fat, right? And so,
I'm a fat ghost.
Damn it! Why am I a fat ghost? But and I sat up because I was at this point my heart rate has kicked up. I'm in high gear because I'm like, shit. I'm waiting for all this stuff to come back. I couldn't believe just a few hours of sleep or whatever could make it all go away.
Right.
But I've set up, and Lance, as sure as I'm sitting here, as sure as I'm saying this, I happened to look out my bay window, out the window there, and I saw, like, it was a really crisp and clear day, even at that hour of the morning. Everything was so green, so vivid colors. it was like the fog had already been removed, at least from my eyeballs anyway. Maybe
Right.
not from my brain, but from my eyeballs. But as sure as I'm sitting here, it was like a voice that wasn't a voice,
Still small voice.
still small voice, in the back of my head, in the back of my mind, or heart, or spirit, whatever you want to say. I'm tired of your bullshit excuses. I want to see how serious you are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is your last hurrah. I want to see how serious you are. And that's what just kept coming back to my head. I want to see how serious you are. I'm tired of all your bullshit excuses. And I've said that, I've told this story 1,000 times in rooms.
Right.
Because at that point, I didn't realize the significance of it right at that moment. It was
Right.
several months later.
Yeah.
But even at that point, I knew that something was different this time.
Yeah. You woke up different.
I woke up different. All the pain was gone. The pain in my chest was gone. I wasn't tremoring. I wasn't sweating. I didn't have all the symptoms I had just 12 hours before. And it was like, oh shit, God's tired of my bullshit excuses. And because that's exactly what would happen is I would say, okay, God, just get me sober. Just help me get sober. And he would part the Red Seas for me to get sober. And sure enough, I'd come up with some bullshit excuse.
To run back to Egypt.
To run back to Egypt, exactly. And you used the analogy yesterday about so I always keep that one thing in your pocket, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'd reach down in my pocket, the baseball schedule's back up, full work schedule. I gotta go. I'm sorry, good Lord. I know you got help me stop drinking, but I had to start again because of this.
Right.
And I really believe
Always somebody else's fault.
always somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
Never my own choice making.
That accountability mirror.
Decision making.
Yeah. That's another thing too. I was thinking real quick about you don't want to have those conversations because once you acknowledge them, then you're responsible.
Yes, and that is exactly why I got drunk, because I didn't want to be responsible.
Right. If you
for
can
my
just
own actions.
yeah, it's exactly right. Because now then the
It was
responsibility.
easier to play the victim.
Yes.
It's easier to play the victim.
Yeah, and I think, and especially in this country where victimhood is celebrated now,
Oh yeah.
and
Totally agree.
And so even that much more with an addiction problem.
Yeah.
You know.
And don't get me wrong, I have a whole new perspective as far with addiction, because you and I used to talk years ago, and we'd just say, "Oh, they're fucked up. Oh, they're fucked up," and we just left it at that. We never went any, and it hit home to me whenever I became the one that was just fucked up.
Yeah, I've told this story where, as a police officer early on, I would go to calls and there would be, some parents and their kid had broke into their house and stole their jewelry to go sell for crack or whatever. And they would bail them out and they would, I don't know what to do. Billy's all, and I'm like, I would say, you have to tough love. You have to cut the kite. You can't have anything to deal with these people. They have to fall and hit rock bottom.
Right.
I just can't do that. That's my son. That's my wife. That's blah, 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 blah. And it was so easy, detached to say that. You got to show tough love. Well, ma'am, I don't know what to tell you. You got to show tough love. I'm just telling you. And then one day I woke up and guess what? That tough love person was laying beside of me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so hard. It wasn't so easy to go, hey, tough love.
Right.
Like I said, I stayed way longer than I should have. And I remember thinking now, just now that I'm that person, it ain't so easy as just show tough love and kick them out.
Right.
Now, ultimately, unfortunately, there's truth to what I said. People have to hit their rock bottom. I cannot save this person.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying this morning on the monologue. When is too much too much?
Right.
Where do you draw that line in the sand?
Yeah, and that's a hard question to ask. I don't think there's a because I think it's so subjective in the sense that it depends on the person and it depends on people.
Here's another perspective too, though. So this morning I was talking about the movie. When do you stand up and say, "Time out! I'm going to rewrite this ending"? Right? What happens when you've already lived the movie, and you've already seen the movie, and you watch it again, and you're like, something's changed. I don't remember doing this. And I'm going back to where I got sober before several years ago.
Right.
But I didn't do it through AA. I just did it by my own self-will,
Yeah.
my own self-knowledge,
Yeah.
because I was the smartest motherfucker in the room. And it kept me sober for a while. We call it being dry drunk, right? It kept me sober for a while, but ultimately, I went back out. And matter of fact, when I went back out, and the big book talks about this, every relapse gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
And this time when I went back
Yep.
out, dude, hell, you saw it firsthand. You saw how bad off I got.
Right.
To where my fat rolls had fat rolls.
Right.
But as I just mentioned, it's so much easier to play the victim as opposed to accept the responsibility.
Yeah.
And I remember telling you, Lance, I know I'm a drunk. I know I got a problem, but I'm just not there yet.
Just not there yet. Yeah. So let me get this straight. I think you just got out of the hospital for perhaps a heart attack.
Yeah.
Your kids are coming to you saying, "Dad, you're drunk. Dad, your children are having, the police are now getting involved in your all's drama.
Yeah.
You're all destroying and you're not there yet."
Right. When was too much my too much?
Yeah. Because to me, I remember, one of my daughters specifically, picking her up and coming home, and I remember, I'll never forget this. Wrote Mom a letter, left it on her pillow about her addiction.
Wow.
And she goes, "You want me to read it to you?" And I said, "Well, if you want to, honey, if you're comfortable, And so here we are on 23, coming back, to the house, and she reads me this letter, and I'm over here driving, and it felt like somebody took a sword and put it right in my throat. I'm listening to this child
pour her heart out
to her mother, and I'm sitting here just thinking. I mean, I'm just going, how in the world, as a parent, do you hear your child say what she's saying?
Yep.
And you don't make a change.
David
it's crazy how strong addiction is.
Oh no, agreed. David would come in.
What I'm saying, I know, is not easy. It's not a monkey. It's King Kong. You don't have a monkey. You have King Kong.
Yep.
To say you have a monkey on your back it's King Kong.
See, David would come in and he'd catch me drinking.
You told me he'd say, "Dad, you're gonna die."
Yep. No. Yeah. He
Please,
was probably
I want you to see me graduate high school. I want you to see me get a college scholarship.
Here's what makes it even worse. I clearly remember right here by the air fryer. I clearly remember him saying to me, "Your dad died when you were 16. I'm not going to make it to 16 before you die." He's 9, 10 years old, maybe 11. And I was like, shit. And my only response was, go to bed.
Shut him down.
Get to bed. That's like 7:30 in the evening, right?
Right.
But he would. I'll never forget. He was crying, tears in his eyes, and he said, "Your dad died when you were 16. I'm not going to make it to 16 before you die. Please stop."
Yeah.
And I thought he was talking about the food, because, matter of fact, we talked about this not too long ago, David and I did. When I would drink, I'd have like everything going, the air fryer going, the oven going, the stovetop going, the microwave going. And there was like all these different dishes, 4 cheese raviolis, General Tso's chicken, French fries.
I remember you would cook for everybody depending on what they wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if this one wanted pizza and this one wanted spaghetti and this one wanted steak, you had all that going at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But I was cooking all this, and you would have thought that I was cooking for the whole family. I wasn't. I was only cooking for me. And so David would see that, and he'd see me eating this shit. And again, 9, 10, 11 years old, Dad, look, just stop eating shit. Just stop eating garbage.
Right.
Go to bed. That was my only response to my son. My son, that was the only thing I said. It was go to bed.
Yeah.
You're in my mind, I'm thinking, you're interrupting my drinking.
Yeah. That's.
But then think about the shame that I felt, and so that shame. Well, shit. That means I have to think. Let me just drink until I get drunk and pass out. I don't have to think at all.
Right.
We call it drinking into oblivion. That oblivion meaning our brain is no longer functioning. We're out. And that was a scary point for me looking back anyway, that was a scary point for me because I was at the point where I just didn't want my brain to come back. I was just too chicken. I was too chicken to kill myself.
Right.
So for some reason, somewhere in my brain, it made more sense to me to go, alcohol, it's slower, more painful death.
Yeah.
I'll let alcohol finish the job. Thank God alcohol didn't get a chance to finish the job. He got close. He got close, but thank God he didn't thank God I was able to rewrite my movie ending.
That just makes me think too, because nobody goes to kindergarten on career day and goes, I think I want to be an addict. Hey Billy, what do you want to be? I want to be a fireman. Oh, that's so great, Billy. Susie, I want to be a teacher. That's so good. How about you? Danny, I think I'm going to be an alcoholic, raging crackhead thief.
Right.
Just an all-around effing loser. Nobody does that. I've never heard that in any teacher ever say that.
Do you think there's a responsibility? And I don't want to get political, but I know that let me say it like this: who's responsible? Who's responsible at the end of the day? We know it's the person. Myself, like for me, I was responsible. I had to make that trek to Gettysburg. I had to go through those first 2 weeks to get to Gettysburg.
Right.
Is there responsibility amongst society, amongst the community, to aid in that recovery, to make a more favorable environment? Because you remember how you were talking about, you got to love them through it. You got to love them through it, right?
That was something she would say to me. Just love me through it.
Yeah, just love me through it.
And that was after all the ass rippings. That was trying to track her, trying to follow her to where she was going, trying to put roadblocks up. You've just exhausted every point. If you can't, it's absolutely the individual's responsibility. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But to that extent, because like I said, it reached a point where I remember I remember it was just a huge blow. I don't want to say blow. It was a huge cluster of a night. We'll put it that way. And she was passed out on the couch, and I remember sitting there Indian style on the floor watching her doing, I call it the dying Darth Vader, right. And actually hoping that would happen. I remember thinking,
wow,
I'm just going to let her die.
Right.
It'll be easier for all of us. Kids will get over it. It'll be hard at first, but I've got no. I've exhausted every. I remember sitting there going, I'm going to lose my kids. I'm going to lose my career, my retirement, my house. I'm going to lose everything.
Right.
And this person doesn't care. Their only thing they care about is their next fix. Mm-hmm. And I remember you used to tell me this, Lance Roberts, this is your life. I'd call you up, you ain't gonna believe what this woman did, blah 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 blah, and you'd say, Lance Roberts, this is your life. Yeah. And I remember you told me that 50 times one night, and I remember I hung up the phone and it started resonating. I'm like, this is not my life. This is not my life. But
ironically, I'm the one.
Right, yeah, it was funny because I remember I got to echo some of that stuff back to you,
Right.
But back to the original question about, do I think society? So it's absolutely the individual's responsibility. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That being said, though, do I think our culture should play a factor in it? Yeah, I do. We have a thing, whenever you have a crash, we have something called a contributing circumstance, okay? So you're driving along and a deer runs out in front of you and you swerve and hit a parked car. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's your responsibility. You're the one driving the car.
Right.
You could have turned right. You didn't have to turn in the parked car. You could have hit the brakes. You could have hit the deer. It's your responsibility, and ultimately it's your fault.
Right.
But the deer running out in front of you is a contributing circumstance. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think it's the same thing with this. I think that society, our government, our culture, whichever one you want to, I think there should be a contributing circumstance where, I think we need to quit glorifying this crap.
Right.
And it's what I think is so hypocritical, is we glorify drug use, we legalize drug use, but then we want to whine and cry we have a bunch of drug addicts. Mm-hmm. How does that make any sense to me? That just, again, this goes back to the Spock and me. How does this make any sense. We want to whine about this, but we want to, well, then you want to start throwing your statistics out about crime. But crime's not the issue. Crime's a byproduct of it.
Yes.
It's a value thing. This is like I told you earlier. We were talking about, I feel like I've become that old man, that old geezer that, well, these whippersnappers, they just don't have the values.
That's a great Brushy Bill Roberts impression, by the way.
But there's truth to it. I don't, how do we glorify it in one sense, and then we see the result of it, and we whine about it in the other?
Yeah,
I don't understand that.
So, the addict. So society is the one that I think gets caught in the middle in that equation, because the addict says, "Oh, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's society's fault that I am the way I am."
Mm-hmm.
In the same breath, the addict will say, "I don't want to fucking deal with this, so let me just go get high because I don't want to think about this.
Yep.
Let me go get drunk so I just don't have to think about this because this is too much for my brain."
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, I know that I'm responsible.
Right.
I know that I'm responsible, but it's just too much for me. So I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to deal with it. So let me go get high. Let me go get drunk. Whereas, you have the government saying, "Yeah, we've got a problem," and me being me, I'm the person that says, minimize government. I don't want government overreach.
Yeah, I
right?
agree.
They start. You give them an inch, they'll take them out. Right. So I understand that too.
Give
I
them an
understand
inch, they'll take everything.
They'll take everything. Yeah. So society ends up being the one stuck. But great example. The other day I was on Twitter, and I doubt you have Twitter.
I have no social media.
Okay, all right.
I refuse.
All right.
This is this part where I don't even want to hear this influence.
Okay.
I can't even stomach it. But go ahead.
I was on Twitter, and
Drew.
This girl had posted. I guess she's overweight. I don't know. I haven't seen her. She posted something on her Twitter account saying that people should stop being charged for multiple seats on an airplane when their obesity is not their fault. And I was going, huh? I read, and I couldn't believe it. We need to come up with another name of rather than obese, is how she kind of finished that. And I was like,
this is this part, Drew, where I'm looking out the window and I'm going, are you listening to this shit you're saying? Like, how do you...
Right. So,
go ahead.
With that being said, I was like, well, again, this is that Gettysburg moment in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
This is the problem. I when I'm standing up on Little Round Top, the southwestern face, right around the 16th Michigan Monument, and I'm seeing that path that, I'd always wanted to charge up Little Round Top, but hell, I was too afraid to even go down.
Right.
And there's brush and there's all this stuff in my way. Let me just take the easy way down and then I'll come up it. Okay, because that makes perfect sense, right? If I can't go down, how the hell do I expect to come up it, right? And I remember thinking, this is my problem. This has been my problem for all these years in the past. I would always see the slightest reason why I couldn't do something, and I would just say, "Oh, well, let me take the easy way. Let me take the easy way." I would let whatever an ant would fall in my path, and that was an obstacle to me. And so when I read that tweet, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" You don't obesity. The term obesity is a medical term, and you don't want to use the medical term any longer because it offends somebody. What?
Yeah. See, that's, to me, I just hear somebody trying to avoid that
conversation with the dark passenger.
Dark side conversation. Yeah. Yep. Now, do I think again, these are things where ultimately, though, you're responsible for yourself.
Right.
So do I think our government with healthy eating should be more of a priority? Well, yeah, who wouldn't?
Right.
Yeah, I think we should. I'm all for that. But that being said, it shouldn't matter.
Right.
And if they're not going to do it, I'm still responsible for I'm responsible for my own happiness. I hate to break it to everybody. That's what I believe. It's my responsibility. It's not your responsibility to make me happy.
Yes.
It's not your responsibility to make my life successful.
Yep. It's
not the government's. It's not social media's. It ultimately is my responsibility. And I don't care. I remember Will Smith actually said this. It may not be your fault what happened to you, but it's damn sure your responsibility to fix it.
Mm.
And that
was that before or after he slapped Chris?
That was before, but okay. You know what? But now we're going to see if he can live by it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because this is one of those things where this was his fault,
Right.
But now we get to see the opportunity. Is it his responsibility? It is his responsibility to fix it.
You know, the other day I was doing a monologue, and it's funny you said that because I was talking about step 2 in our book and in our program, and how step 1, we admit we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. And step 2, we came to believe that the power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. The other day I was actually talking about step 1, the latter half. A lot of times people talk about the step work and especially step 1 because it's kind of broken up into 2. People usually forget the latter half, that our life would become unmanageable. And
Right.
so I was talking about that in the monologue about what does that mean? And that meant for me, my life would become unmanageable, meaning my emotions would become unmanageable, my confidence, my self-esteem, self-value, self-worth. It was I didn't have any.
You didn't have any, yeah.
It wasn't
I remember
necessarily-
you told me that. Yeah, I didn't have it.
I just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so what I would do, and this is brilliant alcoholic thinking. Oh, brilliant alcoholic thinking. Because I couldn't make myself feel good about me, I would go out and try to make other people feel good about themselves so they could in turn repay the favor and make me feel good about me.
Yeah.
Huh? It's like, what? I mean, that's exactly what I would do. Because I couldn't feel, I had no self-esteem, no self-worth, no self-value. And so since I had none, I would go out and make other people, try to make other people happy. And then they in turn, hopefully, would in turn around and make me feel good about it and give me self-esteem and self.
So like, you know,
Worth.
and I don't know if this is accurate, but like coaching the Little League stuff, where you're going, hey, I'm going to work with these kids. And then when you're done, the parents go, Drew, you're such a great coach.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Boy, my little Billy can, he
Hey, sure can't hit a baseball now.
yeah, thank you so much. You know, I'm worth something now.
Yeah. I felt and that was the only sense of gratification.
Which is then an external. It's not. It's external.
It's not me.
It's external. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your confidence depends. Well, it's almost like likes on Facebook.
Oh yeah, that's a great example.
You know,
That's a great example there.
you know, hey, look at this shirt, and you know that sucks, and you know I only got 2 likes, and you're like, oh well, I don't like them, but you like the shirt.
Right.
Hey, there's a good one. My hair. Trust me, I've had some comments about my hair. In case nobody knows, I'm growing my hair out. Okay.
So how long are you going to let it get? I mean,
As long as I don't know yet. I don't.
You haven't length?
We're just letting it grow.
So,
But that being said, real quick, but I don't. Here's the thing. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care if the whole world. I don't care if everybody I talk to says, "God, I cannot stand your hair." I'm liking my hair.
right.
I'm gonna rock his hair for a while. Eddie Munson style before it's over, you know.
So I used to always make fun of your hair, saying that you had the Backstreet Boys hair.
Yeah, New Kids on the Block.
New Kids, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm going to have to come up with another name for your hair though. Now.
Well, I would make fun of it even working. I remember I'd show up on calls and people were like, you know, police officer, and they'd say, you know, well, we're scared of the police. And I go, I wear hair gel. How are you scared of me? I wear hair gel. Look at these pretty teeth. Why are you scared of me? You know. And it would disarm people. You know, oh, right, this guy's got a sense of humor. He's not a robot. But back to the whole self confidence, self esteem thing. But I know who I am. I'm confident in who I am. I like who I am.
Right.
I'm sorry you don't like my. I really am even sorry. I don't care.
Right.
To be honest, you know, when I've decided I've had enough, I'll cut it.
Right.
Or whatever. I don't know.
But
that's you see what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But again, if your self-worth or self-esteem is dependent upon other people, buddy, you
got problems.
You're in for a miserable life because nobody cares.
And that's exactly why I think that was a big reason why. I wouldn't say the main reason. I think it was a huge reason why. Part of the reason why I drank.
Right.
I just didn't want to deal. Why am I existing? You know, again, I was just too. I would be honest. I was just too chicken shit to pull the trigger. I was too chicken shit. I was afraid. I was such a fuck up. I was such a fuck up in my mind. I was such a fuck up that I would fuck up killing myself.
Right.
And then my family would be stuck having to take care of me because I'm such a fuck up. I fucked up killing myself.
Right.
That was the logic that went the alcoholic mindset, the addiction mindset. We are way over time. Holy crap!
What time is it? How long have we been doing?
1:34.
When we get started?
An hour 34 minutes. Yeah, something like that.
But the conversation's still deep.
Oh, I know.
We need a part two.
Yeah, we do need to do a part two.
Part two, yeah.
But no, I'll leave off this.
Okay, well, real quick. Then, so that being said, what do you recommend for people to get self-esteem and self-confidence if they're addiction? Obviously, first thing would be get sober.
Yeah.
What would you? How would you build somebody's self-esteem? Part two.
Oh man, yeah, that would be a part two. That's a huge thing.
Especially because it's hard enough to do it for somebody sober. I mean, I know people that are sober that have no self-esteem, no self-confidence, are I know stone cold sober.
Right.
And they don't have that. Much less trying to then get somebody who has the King Kong of addiction.
Right.
So how does that happen?
I wonder if it wouldn't be.
Maybe we just stop there and.
Yeah, that's going to be a part two.
This is a cliffhanger, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to bring you back.
How do you build someone's confidence? I mean, my knee-jerk reaction is you got to eliminate the obstacles first.
Okay.
Like for me, my obstacle was obviously alcohol. I had to eliminate that alcohol.
And that one is that's an I'm saying it's an easy one.
No, you're right.
From a list perspective, that's an easy one.
But what about the person who's not an alcoholic?
What if the obstacle is this thing right here between your ears?
That's a huge obstacle.
Yeah,
that's a huge obstacle.
That's the thing.
And you know what? I'll part of the cliffhanger. I'll leave it. I'll leave the. I'm going to go old school. I'm going to totally date ourselves. I'm going to go old school.
Or me. Don't lump me into this.
You're older than I am.
I haven't agreed with you, though, so I might be woke and progressive.
Oh, gosh. We're definitely going to end this fucking conversation now. No,
go ahead.
I think it starts with the Bill Phillips power mindset.
Okay.
These little small victories.
Yes, I would agree. Crap! Now we're dated. No, I would agree. I think it absolutely has to start within the mind.
Anything we do.
Yeah, and you have to change what you are putting into your mind. And I know with me.
Nope, you're right.
And I've got my own story with that, with having to change my mindset, realizing exactly what I said earlier. I was I don't have an addiction problem, but I was miserable with areas of my life. Miserable. I was not happy. Miserable. And I remember thinking, nobody cares but me. Now, I absolutely had people that cared, but nobody was in a position to fix my problems.
Right.
And I remember thinking, I have got to change me. And, and I've told you, and you still haven't read the book, by the way, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. I even let you borrow. You were drunk. You probably don't.
I was going to say, that's my knee-jerk
reaction. I saw your face right there. I went, was
that back when I was drinking, or was it after I was?
Yeah, I even let you borrow the book, and then after about a year, I took the book back.
Did you?
Yes. You don't even remember, do you?
No, I don't.
I should kick your ass.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
So actually, my knee-jerk reaction was going to be, that was back when I was experiencing a carbohydrate deficiency.
No,
that was going to be my.
Okay, yeah.
But when you start talking, I was like, okay, that was before I got sober. So yeah, that's easy. I can just jump back to the whole. That was back when I was drinking.
Yeah.
Oh, that was back when I was drinking.
But there's a book I did change my life, really did. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And if you're not happy with who you are, you have the power to change it.
Yep.
But you are the one that have to do it. It has to be deliberate,
Yeah, I think that goes back to. I think I haven't read the book obviously because I was drunk, but I think that goes back to. I think that goes back to. I think you tell me. If we dive into that, somewhere along the lines, it's going to have to start with how we perceive ourselves.
Absolutely.
With how we perceive ourselves, what is our self-value, self-worth? I clearly remember, we pulled up the picture, I clearly remember not being able to see my damn toes every time I looked down. And
had a dicky do.
Yeah, I had a dicky do belly, right? And shit, I had to pull out mirrors to find that shit.
Right.
So
microscopes. But
shut up. Anyway, so it started with these little small victories, and for me, taking that first lap around the triangle, running and walking, running and walking.
Joe Rogan talks about that is setting yourself up for success, setting little goals that you can't fail.
Yep.
Even if it's just walking out, let's say you're 400 pounds and you can't, even if it's walking out to the mailbox for a week, where you can't really screw that up.
Right.
But then as you continue to have these little victories, you start gaining momentum, and once you start gaining momentum, things open up, and that is so true.
Yeah.
We'll
leave off at that. I do want to share this. There was a commencement speech going on, and the guy that was giving the commencement speech, I think he was retired Navy or something like that. He had a very distinguished career in the military.
McLaren, maybe?
I don't know, but he was talking about, and I didn't hear. This is secondhand to me. Mm-hmm. He was talking about the very first thing you do in the morning is make your bed.
Yeah, no. What was his? I think it's something along the lines of like General McLaren or McLaren. It's something along those lines. I'm pretty sure.
You make your bed, and the reason why is because if your day goes to shit and nothing at all goes right, you still get to come home to a freshly made bed.
Right.
But if other things go right, you can count that as one more thing that you won, one more notch in your belt, so to speak. For that small victory that you're talking about. So that's a great topic to leave off on. So thank you for coming down again today. Sorry that we had to do a retake on all of this. New software, new everything.
It's a whole new thing, though.
Yeah,
it's a whole new thing. I mean, like I said, but this goes back to that part where it's inspiring, because I remember that guy that, like you just talked about, is pretty much resolved to the fact that he's going to just die. Mm-hmm. And to the place now where you're skinny and sober, you're going to the meetings, you're helping people, you've started the Joshua Generation, you're doing this little morning video thing every day.
Morning monologues.
Now here we are with a podcast.
Right.
Look at where you are at versus where you were, or where you started. It's great. And if you can do it, anybody else can too. But it takes work, but you can do it.
Well, like we say in the rooms, the elevator's broken. You got to take the steps.
Yeah, I've heard that. The road to success is not an elevator. Take the stairs, bitch.
Yep. And there's fortunately there are 12 steps, and they're relatively easy. But to Lance's point, you have to have that conversation with that dark passenger.
Yeah, and you're going to have to do the work. It's not going to be easy. It has to be deliberate. Discipline. It has to be deliberate.
Yep.
You have to wake up and go, mentally making. That was one of the things about changing myself, was listening to the music I would listen to.
Yeah.
And I'd say, I'm going to have to quit listening to this depressing crap. Well, I remember
I used to listen to Linkin Park.
And I would say, why are you listening to that suicidal music?
Yep.
Listen, I like the band too.
Right.
The guy killed himself.
Yeah.
He sings about this. Why do you continue to feed this? I've heard this as well. There's two wolves inside of us. Yeah, I think you may have heard this.
Yeah.
A good wolf and a bad wolf. Which one wins? The one you feed the most. And that is so true with who we are. If you continue, but it was literally as deliberate as, I'm going to quit listening to this, and I'm going to deliberately listen to this. I'm going to quit reading this and start reading that. And it was deliberate. I had to,
And those are the small decisions that you make.
Right.
That ultimately lead to bigger outcomes.
Yeah.
And that's something else we could talk about too, is outcome goals and process goals.
Yeah, when you mentioned that was really good stuff.
I learned that through my coursework.
Yeah.
That's another thing too. Think about it. The fat guy couldn't run around the triangle. I'm now a certified personal trainer.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I'm so proud of you.
A nutrition coach. Mm-hmm. But I learned a bunch. It's really deep. It gets really deep. So we'll bring that up next time. We'll get Chris involved in the next. She's in her sleep right now, I think. So, guys, we're going to wrap things up. We are an hour and 43 in. So, Lance, again, thank you for coming down.
Hope everybody liked it, got something out of it.
Yeah.
I hate posts and comments, but send them because I want to critique it. See what we did right.
They're going to say something about your hair.
That's okay. See, this is one thing about confidence, my man. I don't care.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up, and we will see you guys next time.